Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Thank God for these never Trump turncoat Republicans. Thank goodness for them, because they're doing conservatives' bidding at present. Case study in that is the Lincoln Project's Tara Setmayer. Lincoln Project was the sort of phony baloney effort by a bunch of never Trump Republicans, in quotation marks, to really enrich themselves while pretending to stand on principle against Trump's excesses. A bunch of Republicans, good card-carrying Republicans.
Wasn't one of the founders molested somebody?
Yeah, John Weaver, sexual predator. Yeah,
a real upstanding citizen.
Good, solid, middle of the road, McCain, W Republicans, right? It's funny. Once they went south on Trump, they went south on so many other issues too that have nothing to do with Trump. Isn't it interesting? Mm-hmm. So now they're roll call votes for the left on so many issues. Our own outgoing Congressman Adam Kinzinger being a nice exhibit of that. It's Trump votes for the Dem Socialist Green New Deal 1.0, votes for this ridiculous carnival censure against Arizona Republican Paul Gosar because he tweeted some anime video about AOC. Who cares? But of course, he and, by the way, Liz Cheney, the other of the two Republicans who voted with the Democrat Socialists to censure Gosar.
Of course she did.
They fall right in line, and all sorts of other issues, fiscal, cultural, the 1-6 business with Kinzinger and his crocodile tears, all of that. Once they're over on Trump, then they're free to fully embrace the entire Democrat socialist agenda, which is what most of them are doing. Tara Setmayer on The View talking about critical race theory.
We at the Lincoln Project pointed that out in the Virginia race, that critical race theory is the new N-word for Republicans in the Southern strategy in 2021. Yes. But Democrats have to have a good comeback to this, or they will lose in 2022. Unfortunately, that's the reality.
Critical race theory is the N-word, for the new N-word for Republicans. It's the Southern strategy. They opposed Glenn Youngkin for governor of Virginia. But they're good, middle-of-the-road, commonsensical Republicans. Love it. Keep talking, Tara. And by the way, keep using that exact phraseology, because it's not what the DCCC wants their allies to be saying. They're trying to figure out what to say on these curriculum issues amid this organic parents' rights movement that has sprung up in response to these authoritarians in K-12 education. Chris Taylor, who's a DCCC spokesman, Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee, said, gave you an indication of what they want the message to be, and talking to Business Insider. House Democrats safely reopen schools, deliver tax relief and the child tax credit, and we're fighting for universal pre-K and paid family leave. Republicans stand in opposition to American families. Our bet heading into 2022 is that voters will choose progress over division. Well, saying that anybody who raises concerns about critical race theory and indoctrination in K through 12 is just a cover for their racism, well, that will work out nationally about as well as it did in Virginia a couple of Tuesdays ago. For more on the topic, pleased to be joined by hotair.com senior editor Ed Morrissey. Ed, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy.
I'm loving the Lincoln Project more with each passing day.
Yeah, it's a gift that keeps on giving, isn't it? I mean, these guys just really can't seem to get out of their own way. I'm surprised they still have money left. I thought everybody had paid off all of their mortgages. So I'm surprised that they still have money left. Apparently, they've still got some.
And it also seems like the Dems are still struggling with exactly how to respond, because they're not going to relent. They can't. So they're going to try to sideline that as an issue. But as long as you have parents experiencing what parents in Loudoun and Fairfax County and South Lake, Texas, and all over the country are experiencing, you're not going to be able to make that go away, because there's a lot of parents that are really invested and perhaps paying more attention than they ever did about their kids' education.
Well, I think they should, right? I mean, that's part of why you have school boards that are elected by the parents and the voters in those districts, is because you want the school boards to be accountable to the parents and to the voters. That's the reason why you have school board meetings, is for accountability. And the idea that you're going to replace that with self-appointed experts and cut off parents' access to curriculum is antithetical to the entire model of school boards. I mean, this is so basic. It's amazing to me that it's escaped people's notice. That what they're describing, what Terry McAuliffe was describing, was basically the elimination of school boards as entities entirely. You don't need a school board if the superintendent and the principals are just simply going to adopt a curriculum without any input from parents whatsoever. Why do you have a school board at all? Just hire a superintendent.
The other issue that they're going to say doesn't exist, and in the most acerbic terms possible, Sarah Jeong is a former editorial board member at the New York Times, incredibly. Harvard law grad. Not incredibly. Actually, it turns out that a lot of Harvard grads, the students who gain entrance into Harvard are legacies or quota fillers, and it turns out that they don't get much of an education at Harvard either. Sarah Jeong's writing is certainly proof of that. She's still an opinion contributor for the New York Times. She wrote, quote, tweeted, "All the stuff you see about inflation in the news is driven by rich people flipping their blank because their parasitic assets aren't doing as well as they'd like, and they're scared that unemployment benefits plus stimulus checks plus $15 minimum wage plus labor shortage is why." Well,
I mean, it's just nonsense.
Yeah.
I mean, first off, inflation is a tax on the poor. It's not a tax on the rich.
Right.
The rich can withstand inflation. It's the poor and it's people on fixed incomes, and there's usually somewhat overlap on those things, and then retirees who pay the price for inflation. So it's not the wealthy who are going to be feeling the pain of inflation. It's going to be people who are not wealthy.
Right.
And the idea that you're going to, I mean, that argument is so elitist and so blinkered to reality that it is really a self-indictment.
Well, it's somebody else who never passed an Econ 101 course. But by the way, inflation, that's helped people who hold equities. That's helped home prices for now. So the parasitic assets, who's getting hammered, to your point, are people who are price sensitive when it comes to filling up their tank or buying groceries.
There's a new Quinnipiac poll that came out today and said that 68% of Americans have had to change their shopping decisions, their buying decisions based on inflation. 68%. That's not the wealthy.
No.
That's not the elite who are feeling that pain. That's people who, like you just said, Dan, are driving up to the pump every day.
Yeah, but I mean, President Biden's just now realizing that inflation is an actual thing. It took him, more than a month to figure this out?
Took months. I mean, we were sort of raising the flag on this back in the early summer, late spring, and Larry Summers wrote about it in February before they even passed that third COVID relief stimulus bill. He warned that it was too much and it was going to generate an inflationary wave. And the White House basically told Larry Summers that he was an idiot. And Paul Krugman said that Larry Summers was an idiot. And it turns out that Paul Krugman and Joe Biden are the idiots, and Larry Summers was right. And I'm not even a big Larry Summers fan, but it's on record. He wrote about it in the Washington Post in February, saying that that they were making a big mistake, that they were putting far too much money into stimulus.
And let's move on to, Rittenhouse trial, because in a few minutes they're about to start their third day of deliberations. Whatever happened to the defense's request for a mistrial with prejudice?
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of interesting because the judge says, well, the state hasn't had a chance to respond to this, but the defense actually raised this not the day that the jury went into deliberations. They raised it a couple days earlier, and based on the exchange over the right to remain silent that took place during Rittenhouse's Binger's cross-examination of Rittenhouse, and so this thing's been floating around for a bit. I've watched a little bit of the trial, not a ton of it, and it seems to me that Judge Schroeder is really just trying to get this thing to a jury, right? He doesn't want to be seen as intervening here. He wants the process to play out. And what I'm guessing is that he's holding this in abeyance until he hears what the jury has to say. And maybe the jury just makes it a moot point. But the longer this thing stretches on, the less confident I am that they're going to look at this as a complete
Well, here again, and the identitarian left's commentary on Rittenhouse from the president on down, and it continues to the present. Cori Bush, one of the newly minted socialist Spice Girls, tweeting, "When we marched in Ferguson, white supremacists would hide behind a hill near where Michael Brown was murdered, and shoot at us. They never face consequences. If Kyle Rittenhouse gets acquitted, it tells them that even 7 years later, they still can get away with it." So this is a referendum on white supremacy, according to Cori Bush. That's going to play well.
Well, not only that, but I mean, it's a lie. I mean, the police department there said nobody was shooting at them from any place. The only people that got shot at were police during those marches. There were 2 police officers shot. So the whole thing is a lie. It's something that she made up. Cori Bush is a demagogue, and look, I mean, she's very successful at being a demagogue, but that's all she is. And I think that Democrats who fall in line behind that are setting themselves up for a massive failure. Virginia shows that I think that voters have really had enough of this type of ethnic determinism, and the poisonous effect it has on people trying to work together and live together.
Now, the midterms are still a year away, and obviously they look good right now. They usually do for the party out of power. But is there anything that concerns you, pitfalls that the Republicans should be wary of that could derail the momentum that the party is enjoying right now?
Yeah, and they have a ton of it right now. Actually, the Quinnipiac poll today shows that Democrats are only scoring at 38% on the generic ballot. Republicans are at 46%. And if you know anything about the generic, I know you guys know this, but if you're not familiar with the generic ballot, there's a real tilt to Democrats on the way that these polls are taken. So if Democrats have anything less than a 5-point lead in these things, it's usually bad news. And if they're losing by 8, you're talking about a red wave the size of a tsunami that's coming their way. The one thing that I would say that we have to be careful about is candidate selection. We had that type of momentum in 2010, and we had the Tea Party as sort of the populist impulse in the Republican Party at the time, which was great. We got a lot of good mileage out of that movement, but it did result in getting some questionable candidates up there, some bad candidates on the tickets, and that did hold back the ability to score points off of that type of a wave. And so what I'd say is that candidate recruitment, candidate selection are going to be really critical, and we need to make sure that the Republicans are putting their best foot forward in that point.
Yeah, right. We don't need anybody having TV ads saying "I'm not a witch," for example.
Yeah, I mean, that was certainly one of them. We don't need a Todd Aiken, which is, I think, in 2012 or 2014, which was a similar sort of thing. That, those are the types of things that you probably want to avoid in 2022.
Yeah, makes sense. Something that's interesting, though, watching this play out, and if the trajectory holds true for the next year, something about the left, generally speaking, particularly the base of their party, which dominates, I don't think they care. When they are in power, they go for broke. They will get as much done as they can for as long as they hold it, because perhaps they know something. They know, we could lose Congress in 2022 and Republicans could gain control, but we still have the backstop of the president. And even if we lose the presidency in 2024 and the Republicans have the presidency and Congress for 2 years, you know what we'll see? We'll see them move the needle back a little bit from where we moved it, but just a little bit. And then we'll have the opportunity, the midterms in 26, to continue pushing our road to serfdom agenda that much further along. They go for broke, and Republicans are incremental. I mean, think of what beset Donald Trump in his first 2 years having to deal with Speaker Paul Ryan, for example.
I would say that that's true of the extreme wings in both parties. I think that you have that impulse. I just think that there's so many more of the progressives in the Democrat Party than there are, say, you could say MAGA or you could say Tea Party. In the earlier incarnation of Republican populism, I think that there is a populist impulse that says we're just going to try to ram as much through possible while we, make hay while the sun shines sort of thing. I just think it's much more of a problem for Democrats because of the fact that progressives now make up, 80% of their seats in Congress.
Well, but the question is it a problem? Because I mean, the trend is in their direction. America is being taken down that road to serfdom, and when Republicans have had control, I mean, government hasn't shrunk. There have been some victories, temporary, fleeting, marginal, but I mean, we're continuing to walk down their path at a slower pace when we're in charge.
Right. I agree with you. When we had full control of government in Washington, the gains that we made were incremental. The tax reform thing that we passed in 2017 could have been so much better. Could have been a real reform rather than just tax cuts. And I think we were expecting that. But I think that in terms of what's going to happen this time around, I think you're right that progressives are saying, look, the writing's on the wall anyway. Let's just try to slam in as much as we can, and try to make sure that Republicans can't undo it. I just don't think they're going to get the votes to do that. I don't think that there's enough of them in Congress at the moment to be able to accomplish that. I think you've got too many Democrats who are looking at the midterms and thinking they could still maybe win if they slow things down.
He is Ed Morrissey, senior editor, hotair.com. Ed, thanks as always.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Ed. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
It seems like everyone is on a complicated diet these days. Gluten-free, keto, metabolic, sugar-free. And with these diets comes special dietary protocol and food products. You can find plenty of advice on your social media sites, but you need expertise to purchase the right food items. A visit to